atjhe o re bolaile ho fedile ha o sa na ntho ka etsa.
The Boipatong Massacre, a tale of terror and political strife. June 17, 1985, will be remembered as a night of blood in South Africa. The peaceful haven of Boipatong suddenly transformed into a battleground. More than 40 innocent lives were senselessly slaughtered in an explosion of politically motivated discord. What were the sparks that ignited this living hell? And who were these faceless attackers who plunged a community into an inferno? Not only was the Boipatong Massacre an example of wanton violence, it bore out as a premeditated massacre, being one of the darkest days in South Africa's troubled phase trending politically. In the moments before doom, world leaders struggled for power in a titanic clash that left their countrymen to fend for themselves. The atrocity, a macabre emblem of the nation that had imploded more divisions till some undefined end. Boipatong, a small township near Johannesburg, was the scene of an uncompromising clash for power as tensions rose between two political factions, namely the African National Congress, which is the ANC, and the Inkatha Freedom Party, which is the IFP. The community filled with families of working class backgrounds who were stretching to make ends meet and afraid on a daily basis because they lived in New York City. Where violence seemed ubiquitous, Boipatong residents were at home that evening, unaware of the horror that they would soon face. And then armed men with links to the IFP, mobilized by dark figures within the Apartheid establishment, moved in on this township. At the beginning, they went striding softly, sneaking up in warm gloom upon their wager. And then came a slaughter. Doors kicked down, houses looted, the machetes, the guns, and the clubs swung with malice as cries of those being attacked echoed through a cold night. Witnesses reported scenes of mayhem and carnage, dead bodies on the streets and houses set alight. The nature of the carnage was staggering and so terrible that age or innocence were no respecter. Children and women had died along with old men. Others tried to conceal themselves under the beds or pieces of furniture, their hearts racing as they hoped and prayed that the killers would not come for them next. When the sun rose, it became tragic how far spread out this mass killing took place. What was once a vibrant township now lay in ruin and death, echoing with the lamentations of those who had lost it all. The Boipatong Massacre made headlines around the world, igniting nationwide and international outrage. The ANC blamed the IFP, and with it, he claimed that there was collusion between them and police in many of these violent outbursts, essentially arguing that either the SAP had been asleep at best or complicit to those few armed forces who were bent on continuing their unified guerrilla warfare campaign against UDF ANC elements. The IFP in response denied it had anything to do with the massacre, dismissing its opponents' reports as propaganda. The blame game that ensued only further divided the nation, sparking more violence and bitterness. The world cried for explanation. The massacre at Boipatong was covered by many media outlets, and international groups such as the Human Rights Watch traveled to the area where they heard chilling testimonies of survivors. Some reported that the police vehicles had led the attackers into the township.
Supporters were delivered in Acaspias outside the township here by police. And we've got one lady here who actually saw a policeman, helping that Inkatha supporter was carrying a panga. The policeman broke down the door and then went in, and then he was followed by this Inkatha man. Then they started taking all people in the house.
Deeper South Africa's political undercurrents were no strangers to Boipatong, a township mainly inhabited by Zulu-speaking supporters of the IFP. Inanda quickly turned into a theater in the broader struggle between the ANC and its official rival at the time. The animosity was not only political, it was a racial antipathy running deep under the surface of life in South African communities. And so Boipatong became an emblematic flashpoint across the land-consuming confrontation. The massacre was a graphic example of how out of hand the struggle of power had become, and innocent people were caught in the crossfire. Dusk was when the attackers had struck, and dawn arrived to reveal an unimaginable bloody massacre. Every second in between, filled with dread, brought about such immense chaos. It was well executed and planned with militaristic precision, giving the residents of Burners soon time to react or escape. In the days that followed, as the media circuits began and politicians made noise in parliament, South Africa edged closer to boiling point. Mystery still surrounds Boipatong Massacre. Who ordered the attack? The police failed to keep the residents safe. So what was their excuse? Despite numerous probes, how the medical psychologist died has never been completely explained. The unknown makes the pain worse, leaving them moaning without justice. The survivors still wake up to it. Their horror as bright and shocking in remembrance as those explosions itself. The quiet that settled over the township when they had left, punctuated now and then only by a child's muffled sob or his mother's breaking into open weeping. Such silence is louder than any words. Some survivors told their cowering under piles of corpses, fighting the urge to scream or take a breath as bloodthirsty killers climbed family by bloody family in search of living trophies. There was danger in every shadow. The echo of a stepping footplate could equal a blood cellar. The smell of burning houses was a creed in his nostrils. Heat radiating from the flames as a metallic tank filled the air, mingling with screams and moans coming closer still, while sirens wailed somewhere further down. Familiar faces are remembered broken and contoured in fear, their sweetness erased. Witnesses also gave sickening accounts of the attack. One resident described it as like a nightmare. First I heard my neighbor screaming, and then it went quiet. When I opened the door, blood was everywhere. Analysts said that the massacre was a turning point in what became an all-out war apartheid, with most concluding that it was part of a systematic attempt to break down key ANC support structures. The Goldstone Commission, which investigated the political violence, later pointed to indications of state complicity, but the details of government involvement are still a matter of debate and sit-stock, evoking two possible responses. I just told you why. Boipatong Massacre. A wake-up call for a freeing country, it exposed the grim facts of political violence in South Africa and served as a call to arms for those who agitated to have them changed. But it also laid bare the fault lines running through the nation for a decade later. For some, the memory that the massacre appears to reveal how far parties are willing to go in preservation and improvement of power, frequently during the expense inside their very constituents. An exceptional case of resilient academia and sustained political activism. The Boipatong Massacre are a grim reminder in the annals of history that still yields absolute horrors, revoking shared disbelief till this day. As the nation attempts to move forward, these memories from that night serve as a cautionary tale of what happens when power-hungry leaders go unchecked, and how politics also counts.